He was just a quiet mechanic in a snowy town, until one simple act of kindness got him fired. The next morning, 5 dark SUVs pulled into his driveway, silent as shadows. Then a man stepped out, looked him in the eye, and said 6 words that changed everything. What started with a broken scooter turned into a secret legacy, a life-changing offer, and a decision that could power the world. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's jump into the story. The snow had started to fall again in Maryland Falls. It wasn't heavy, just a steady whisper of white that clung to rooftops, boots, and every breath that left your mouth. Theo Hartman pulled his scarf tighter as he stepped into Benton Auto Garage, already rubbing his hands together to bring them back to life. The heater hadn't worked in weeks, and Roy, the owner, kept saying, "Heat don't fix cars." Theo didn't argue. He rarely did. At 29, life had already taught him that some things aren't worth the energy. But today, something felt different. Not in the stars or aligned way, more like a quiet tension in the air, like the world was holding its breath. He got to work fast, sliding under a beat-up truck and letting the familiar smell of grease and metal calm his nerves. Rent was due in 2 days. His mother's medication had wiped out most of his savings. But he kept his head down, letting the rhythm of tools and bolts drown out the noise in his mind. Then came the sound he couldn't ignore. Soft thud, a sharp gasp. Then silence. Theo rolled out from under the truck and looked toward the street. An elderly woman lay next to a tipped-over mobility scooter. Her coat was old, frayed at the sleeves. Her hands trembled as she tried to push herself up, but the scooter's wheel had jammed against a patch of ice. Without thinking, Theo dropped his wrench and jogged out of the garage. "Ma'am, you okay?" he asked, kneeling beside her. She looked up, startled. Her gray eyes were wide behind thick glasses. "I'm all right," she whispered. "Just trying to get to the pharmacy before it closes." Theo glanced at the scooter's chain. It had popped loose and rusted through in a few places. No way she'd make it another block. "Let's get you inside where it's warm," he said gently. He helped her to her feet and led her into the garage, ignoring the stares from 2 co-workers. The woman winced as she walked, her knees stiff, and her steps slow. Inside, he pulled over a folding chair and handed her a cup of lukewarm coffee from the break table. "Sit tight," he said. "I'll have that scooter good as new in no time." She smiled faintly. "You're very kind," he grinned. "Well, kindness is free, unlike scooter repairs." But as he reached for his tools, a voice boomed from the office door. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Hartman?" Roy Benton, tall and red-faced, stomped into the garage with his usual scowl and stained flannel shirt. A half-used toothpick danced between his teeth. "She's not paying," Roy barked, jabbing a finger at the woman. "We're not a shelter." "Get back to work." Theo stood up slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. "She fell in the snow, Roy. Her scooter's busted. I'm just helping her get back on the road." "Not your job," Roy snapped. "We've got 3 vehicles lined up. You want to play hero, do it after hours. Otherwise, you're done." Theo looked back at the woman. Her eyes had dropped to her lap. She clutched the coffee like it was all she had. He turned back to Roy. "I'm not leaving her like this." Roy didn't hesitate. "Then you're fired. Clean out your box." The garage went silent. The clatter of tools, the low hum of the radio. It all vanished. Even the snow outside seemed to pause. Theo nodded once. "All right." He didn't shout or argue. He just picked up his toolbox and walked the woman out with quiet dignity. "Thank you," she said softly as they reached the corner. He smiled, a little tired but still warm. "You take care of yourself now." That night, Theo sat on his worn-out couch in a too-small apartment, watching snow pile up on the windowsill. He had no job, barely any savings, and a fridge that held more empty space than food. But he didn't feel sorry for himself. In fact, he felt calm. Helping her had felt right, even if it had cost him. Then, just before sunrise, the rumble of engines shook the quiet street. Theo, still in his robe, peered out the window. At first he thought it was a dream, but it wasn't. 5 deep green SUVs, sleek and silent, pulled up in front of his house. Their windows were dark. Their engines purred like sleeping lions. Neighbors peeked through blinds. A dog barked once, then fell silent. The front SUV door opened. A man in a dark coat stepped out. He walked up the driveway with purpose. When Theo opened the door, the man gave a polite nod. "Mr. Hartman," he said, voice calm and clear. "Someone would like a word with you." And just like that, Theo Hartman's ordinary world began to unravel in the best way possible. Theo Hartman had never been the center of attention in his life. But on that snowy morning, as 5 dark green SUVs lined his street like royal chariots, the whole neighborhood was watching. Wrapped in his flannel robe and worn slippers, Theo stood on his porch, heart pounding. The man at his door wore a long coat and dark gloves. He looked like someone used to saying very important things to very important people. "Mr. Hartman," the man said again, calm as ever. "Someone would like to speak with you." Before Theo could ask who, the back door of the front SUV opened. Out stepped a woman in a gray winter coat with fur at the collar. Her posture was straight, her hair perfectly set, and the way she moved suggested she was used to arriving in style. Theo squinted. His mouth opened slightly. It was her, the woman with the broken scooter. Only, she wasn't the same woman anymore. Gone were the layers of old clothing. She now walked like someone with purpose and power. She approached the porch and gave Theo a kind, steady smile. "May I come in for a moment?" she asked gently. Theo blinked. Yes. Of course." Inside his tiny living room, she sat comfortably on the sagging couch, while Theo nervously picked up socks from the floor and moved. Aside a pizza box, she didn't seem to mind. "My name is Vivian Hale," she said, reaching into her handbag and placing a neat folder on the coffee table. "I owe you an explanation, and perhaps an opportunity." Theo sat across from her, unsure what was happening. Vivian continued, "Yesterday you saw me as just an old woman on a broken scooter. You treated me with kindness, respect, and without expecting anything in return. That's rare these days, that's why I'm here." Theo leaned forward slightly. "I didn't do much, just helped fix a chain." "You did more than you know," she replied. "I was testing something. I've spent the last year visiting businesses in disguise. No staff, no bodyguards, no name. I wanted to see who would treat me like a person, not a problem." She opened the folder. Inside were blueprints, old ones drawn by hand. Theo's eyes scanned the sketches, detailed engine diagrams and notes written in strong block letters. Vivian tapped the paper. "These were designed by Oscar Hartman, your grandfather, I believe." Theo's jaw nearly dropped. "How do you know about him?" Vivian's smile softened. "He helped me once, a long time ago when I had nothing. He taught me how to build things, how to believe in myself. He never asked for anything, just told me I could do more than survive. That's when I decided, if I ever found someone with his heart, I'd pay it forward." Theo stared at the blueprints. His grandfather had passed away when he was a teenager. A quiet man who loved engines and coffee. Oscar had never talked much about the past. "I didn't know he helped anyone like that," Theo said quietly. "He helped more people than you'll ever know," Vivian said. "But now it's your turn." She pulled out another document from the folder, this one newer. "This is an offer letter. I'm building something new, a sustainable innovation hub. I want you to be part of it, not as an assistant, but as a lead. Your hands, your instincts, they're rare." Theo shook his head. "But I'm just a garage mechanic. I didn't finish college. I don't have any real credentials." "Neither did your grandfather," Vivian replied with a smile. "Some people build resumes, others build legacies. I know the difference." Theo was silent for a moment, the weight of her words settling in. He looked at the offer letter again. A real salary, benefits, a place where he could build something that mattered. "I don't even know what to say," he whispered. Vivienne stood and straightened her coat. You don't have to say anything right now. Think it over. You've got 48 hours. As she walked to the door, she paused. Oh, and Mr. Hartman? Yes? I wasn't the only one watching yesterday. The world needs more people like you. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. With that, she left, stepping back into the SUV. The convoy pulled away silently just as it had arrived, leaving behind nothing but tire tracks and stunned neighbors. Theo closed the door and sat back down on the couch. He looked around at his little home, the peeling wallpaper, the old clock ticking softly on the wall, the coffee cup still on the table. Then his eyes fell on the folder, his grandfather's handwriting. A new opportunity, and a memory of a quiet act of kindness that somehow changed everything. Theo leaned back, his heart full and his mind racing. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't just a quiet hero anymore. He had just been handed the first page of a new story. Theo Hartman hadn't slept much. The folder Vivian Hale had left him sat on his kitchen table like a treasure chest he hadn't dared to open again. Every time he passed it, his chest tightened. Inside was a new life, a job, a salary that looked like a mistake, and blueprints drawn by a man he missed more than he liked to admit, his grandfather, Oscar Hartman. By morning, Theo had made his choice. He packed a small bag with the basics, his favorite wrench, a notebook, and a worn photograph of him and Oscar standing in front of a rusted-out pickup truck they'd fixed together years ago. At exactly 9 a.m., a silver car arrived at his apartment. The woman who stepped out introduced herself simply. Clara Walsh, Ms. Hale's operations coordinator. I'm here to take you to the facility. The ride was quiet. Theo watched the city pass by like it belonged to someone else. It didn't feel like the same world he'd lived in yesterday. Nothing felt the same. After an hour, they reached Ridgeport Hills, a place he'd only seen on the news. The buildings were sharp, modern, and quiet. Everything looked polished, like a dream built from glass and metal. Clara led him into the Hale Innovations campus. Wide walkways, clean architecture, solar panels on every rooftop. Engineers passed them in sleek uniforms, nodding politely. It felt like the future. Finally, she stopped at a tall set of double doors. She's waiting inside, Clara said, then walked away. Theo pushed the doors open. Vivian Hale stood by a wall of windows, sunlight pouring in behind her. She turned and smiled. Welcome, Mr. Hartman. I'm glad you came. I'm still not sure this isn't a dream, he said. Honestly, give it a few more minutes, she replied, walking toward another door. There's something you need to see. She led him down a hallway lined with framed photographs. Some were of inventions, early engines, solar tech, and strange machines Theo didn't recognize. But others were personal. A much younger Vivian, laughing with a group of people in a dusty workshop. One photo stopped him cold. A man stood beside Vivian. Thick hands, strong build, familiar eyes. His grandfather. That's Oscar, Theo said softly. Vivian nodded. He saved my life. Not with money or advice, but with patience and kindness. I was 17, homeless. I stumbled into his repair shop thinking it was abandoned. He gave me food, a bed, and taught me how to rebuild things. I never forgot that. They reached a final room. Vivian opened the door and gestured for him to enter. Inside was a workshop. Not just any workshop. The workshop. Every tool gleamed. There were computers, screens, robotic arms, machines that looked like they belonged in space. A tool bench, with Theo's name already engraved on it. Theo stepped forward slowly, his fingers brushing over a neatly arranged row of wrenches. This is all for me? He asked, stunned. Not just for you, Vivian said. For what you represent. This space is for building the impossible. I want you to lead Project Emberline. Theo turned. What's Project Emberline? Vivian walked over to a covered object in the center of the room. She pulled off the tarp. Underneath was a half-completed engine. Sleek, compact, but different. It had a smooth design, copper coils, and what looked like a glass cylinder running through its middle. This is the first clean-core engine designed to run without fossil fuels, using advanced battery cycling and regenerative components, she said. The concept was your grandfather's, but the tech didn't exist back then. Theo stepped closer. This was his? His dream, she said softly. But he never got to finish it. Now the world is ready, and I want you to finish it. He stared at the machine. It wasn't just metal and wires. It was hope. It was a second chance. I'm not an engineer, he said quietly. Vivian gave a knowing smile. No, you're something rarer. You're a builder who leads with heart. This project needs that more than it needs degrees. She handed him a key. This unlocks the workshop. Come and go as you need. You'll have a full team, designers, engineers, fabricators, but you're in charge. I believe in you. Theo took the key. His hands shook a little. One last thing, she added, stepping to a cabinet. She opened it and pulled out a red metal toolbox. I kept this, she said. It belonged to your grandfather. I think he'd want you to have it. Theo opened the box slowly. Inside were the tools he'd grown up watching Oscar use. An old flashlight with Oscar's initials carved into it. A screwdriver wrapped in black tape. The smell of oil and cedar hit him like a memory. He closed the lid, overwhelmed. Vivienne put a hand on his shoulder. You're not here by accident, Theo. You've been preparing for this your whole life. Now it's your time. As he stood in that perfect workshop, the weight of the past settled softly into his bones, but so did something new. Purpose. He turned toward the engine, and without a word, Theo Hartman picked up his wrench and got to work. Theo Hartman had never led a team in his life. Now he was the head of a project that could change the way the world used energy. Each day inside the Hale Innovations workshop felt like both a gift and a challenge. He spent hours studying the blueprints left behind by his grandfather, Oscar Hartman. They were complex, drawn by hand, and filled with ideas that were years ahead of their time. Theo wasn't trained in advanced engineering, but he had something just as important: instinct, patience, and a deep respect for the work. He also had help. The team Vivian Hale had assembled included some of the brightest minds in clean technology, but what surprised Theo most was how they looked to him, not just for instructions but for guidance. They respected his voice, they asked questions, they listened, and slowly, the impossible started to come to life. The engine, Project Emberline, began taking shape. Theo and the team worked day and night. There were setbacks, a failed test run, overheating coils, a wiring issue that caused a power surge, but they kept going. Every time Theo wanted to give up, he remembered the day he helped a stranger on the side of the road. He thought about his grandfather's quiet wisdom. He thought about the toolbox, now sitting on his workbench, as if Oscar were still there, reminding him to breathe, focus, and keep turning the wrench. Weeks passed. Then one evening, something happened. Theo stood alone in the workshop, tired but determined. He ran a final check, adjusted one last wire. Then, he flipped the switch. The engine hummed softly. No smoke, no shaking. Just a low, steady sound like a heartbeat. Lights blinked green. It worked. Theo stood still, barely breathing. His hands trembled, not from fear but from joy. He wasn't just fixing machines anymore. He was building something that could power homes, cities, futures. The next day, Vivian entered the workshop with a rare smile. You did it, she said. We did it, Theo replied. She nodded. Now it's time to show the world. A week later, Project Emberline was unveiled at a clean energy summit. Journalists, scientists, and government officials from around the country gathered in a large auditorium in Ridgeport Hills. The stage was simple. In the center stood the engine. Theo stepped onto the stage. He wore a simple shirt and jeans, just like he always had. No suit, no speech cards, just the truth. He told them the story of a broken scooter and a cup of coffee, of losing his job, finding a toolbox and choosing kindness when no one was watching. He spoke of his grandfather and a dream that had waited decades to come alive. When he finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then applause erupted, loud, long, and full, of something deeper than approval. Hope. After the summit, a tall man approached Theo backstage. He introduced himself as Mason Drew, the head of a major global power company. "We've seen dozens of clean engine designs," Mason said, "but none like this. This isn't just efficient, it's revolutionary. We'd like to talk about bringing Emberline to cities around the world." Theo blinked. "You mean like everywhere?" Mason smiled. "Exactly that." That night, back in his apartment, Theo sat on the edge of his bed, the offer still fresh in his hand. His phone buzzed nonstop, interviews, partnership requests, invitations. His name, once unknown, now trended on every social platform. But he didn't care about fame. He thought of something Vivian had said once. Some people build resumes. Others build legacies. Theo didn't want to be remembered for building a machine. He wanted to be remembered for why he built it. The next morning, he walked into Vivian's office. She looked up, calm and curious. "I've made a decision," he said. "I want to keep Project Emberline open source." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? That's billions in potential profit." Theo smiled. "I'm sure. I didn't fix that scooter for a reward. I did it because it was right. This engine, this gift, it should be for everyone." Vivian stood and offered her hand. "Oscar would be proud." He shook it. "I hope so." In the weeks that followed, Project Emberline rolled out to schools, hospitals, and small towns that had never known reliable electricity. Theo traveled the country, not as a celebrity, but as a teacher, showing mechanics and students how to build and install the system themselves. One day, while visiting a remote workshop in Montana, a teenage girl approached him, grease on her hands, hair tied back, eyes full of questions. "Mr. Hartman," she said shyly, "I read your story. Do you think someone like me could build something like this too?" Theo knelt to her level, smiling. "I don't just think, you can," he said. "I know you will." That evening, he watched the sunset from a hilltop. The sky glowed orange and gold. The air was quiet except for the soft whir of an Emberline engine running nearby. Theo Hartman, once just a quiet mechanic in a cold garage, had lit a spark that traveled far beyond anything he imagined, and that spark would never go out.